if we're thinking about a positive example for these companies, is there anyone who you think is good at content moderation? What would it look like in an ideal scenario for you?
No one's coming to mind as being particularly good. Look, let me start by what this isn't in my view. So I don't think that this is an outcome where I'm anticipating that conservatives are completely left alone. They can say whatever they want, wherever they want, whenever they want. That is not an expectation that I have. I do think, and Danielle was touching on this point, companies like Facebook and Twitter and everybody else, they do have to answer the very real dynamic that no one trusts them. That this isn't just the Heritage Foundation. This isn't, right? No one trusts them. And that is an existential challenge for them as a business entity. And they're either going to get with it and begin addressing the underlying, lack of trust, or they're going to, independent of what the three of us think, get regulated into oblivion. Like that is the inevitable place where this goes. And so as someone who is a free marketer and as someone who understands these companies, frankly, to be at the core issue of some national security issues that I focus on and other things, I don't want that to happen. That is a bad outcome. But the status quo is unsustainable.
So without Section 230, a lot of our conversations about user-generated content are moot. But what does good regulation look like? What does a fair regulation look like to you?
So one, define good faith more clearly. I think that's essential. That's fundamental. Strike otherwise objectionable. So in part of the text, when it lists the types of things that companies are being incentivized to remove from their channels, it has this list of a reasonable belief that is obscene, lewd, lascivious, filthy, excessively violent, or harassing. And then it tacks on this last statement of, or otherwise objectionable. Now, in a reasonable context, that's actually fine language, but that has actually been used and interpreted so broadly so as to include essentially anything they want. And I think that taking another hard look at that specific language, and possibly it's just being struck from the provision, is something worth being debated. I also want to make it very clear that there should be no effect on anti-terrorism, child sex abuse, or cyber stalking laws. So I don't want to disincentivize these companies from taking that content down. I think we need to make sure that they know that they are completely protected and being very aggressive in taking terrorism, sex abuse, and that kind of stuff down. I had talked previously about the Bad Samaritan carve out. I think that's huge. And then here's one that not a lot of people talk about, but I think is really important. I don't think that Section 230 protections should be made contingent on exceptional access or similar law enforcement cooperation. So exceptional access is this notion that essentially, government backdoors into these programs so that, terrorists and other bad guys can be identified and found. I think that there are sufficient laws already on the books for dealing with this. There are some very real technical limitations on that idea. And I think it just confuses the issue when you make Section 230 and you start intermingling that conversation with exceptional access or even things like antitrust.
I still have to say, though, that I am concerned with how speech has been interpreted repeatedly by the state writ large, whether or not that's the government or the courts. I remain concerned of what that would actually look like. There's no means by which you can say, you guys are cool, not you guys. That doesn't at some point relate to someone making a decision about what content is permissible, what content is not permissible, in a way that I think they would somehow find a way to make me mad.
Well, I'm confident that's true, and I'm confident they would find a way to make me mad. Danielle and I certainly are focusing on different aspects of Section 230, but the point is that Section 230 actually deals with both aspects, both the under moderation and the over moderation. And so the fact that we're kind of emphasizing one aspect over the other in this conversation, one, means this is a more balanced conversation, but then two, demonstrates that those things aren't inherently at cross purposes, right? These things are complementary and they need to be addressed as much. The thing that makes this even harder, though, and this is kind of bringing us back to the top of the conversation, is that there are some on the political right who are engaged in this conversation in an effort to kind of settle scores. And then there are some on the political left that are engaging in this conversation that are trying to engage in social engineering. And all the while, there are American people who are caught in the middle who just want to be able to get online and not be manipulated or abused.